Hi everyone. Cześć wszystkim. No niestety musimy chwilę poczekać, bo nie ma naszego gościa specjalnego. We need to wait a bit for our special guest to have the presentation. So give her another couple minutes, and we have only 10 people now, so let's wait for another couple minutes also for people to join. And if you have any specific questions or any specific topics that you want Nida to go through and to show you, let us know in the comment. Please also tell us where are you from. You can speak Polish or English, both are okay on chat. And if there is any question in Polish, I will translate it to Nida later on. So let's give everyone a couple of minutes and see. Okay. As we still do not have Nida on call, I'm still waiting for her. I don't know if she has some technical problems. She's not telling me that she has any technical problems, so I have no idea what's going on, but let's wait another minute. So in the meantime, let me ask you a question and you can answer. No, I will not tell any joke. Nie powiem żadnego kawału, ale możemy porozmawiać o tym. Okay, I see there are also foreigners, so I will be still in English only. So let's ask one question and you can answer on chat. What are the topics that you would like to see during the OWASP yearly conference? So probably it's not gonna happen this year somehow on site, but we will work on that to make it as soon as possible. So what are the topics that you would like to see, that you are interested in, that you would like to present maybe? This is something that I'm curious, and let's wait a couple seconds because you have lags probably and you don't see me in the real time. And in the while you are doing that, I don't see any answers. So please answer the question. What are the topics that you are interested in? And I see we have Nida on call. Hello, Nida.
Hello, Daniel.
Yeah, hey Nida, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Great. Yeah, finally. I thought that you maybe had some technical problems or something, but finally
Yes.
you're here. Great.
Yeah, actually, I had some problem with my camera and just I tried to fix it.
Okay, so just in the meantime, I asked what are the topics that they are interested in. We have some 30 or 40 people already joined, but I see no answer. And I also asked if they have any question to you, so
Yep.
that you can cover during your presentation. Uh, but what I see on YouTube, they are interested in mobile app testing and in OWASP Zap and why it's better than burp suit. So maybe we will start with this question, Nida. What do you use normally? You use burp suit or you use Zap or you use both?
Actually, mainly I use Zap proxy because I feel that it's I don't know, but it's just feeling that it's a fast tool, and always they achieve my targets when I just want to analyze some traffics and some exploits. So mainly I use Burp Suite, but I feel relax more with Zap tool.
Okay. Is there any other tool or project from OWASP that you are using very often or that you like?
Actually, all the project which concern with the web application penetration testing or dynamic analysis for the code, more than interesting that to use that tool or to read about it at least or to watch the webinar for them.
Okay, great. So the last question before we start, like, how did you find OWASP Poland and why do you want to share something with us?
Yeah, actually, this is not the first experience with me with the community or conferences with Poland. So the first thing that I feel that Polish people very interested with in general IT topics from cloud, Kubernetes, security, and I like to be in this environment or to give the knowledge or sharing the knowledge with the Polish people. And I have a lot of colleagues and friends in Poland, so I'm happy today to say Dzień dobry for all of you and to start this session about DevSecOps. And finally, the topics itself is very interesting uh, to investigate with and to learn about Kubernetes and the security with each other.
Okay, so when you said Dzień dobry, I think that this is the really good time to start the session. So I will keep quiet, I will go on mute, and I will stop my video, and you can share your screen and go ahead. Thank you very much for joining us, and good luck with the presentation.
Yes, thank you. So let me start. This session actually more about penetration test itself and mainly about Kubernetes, which this tool consider formally as a most used tool in scaling, automation, and in deploying the apps because they have many benefits for this tool from scaling and actually saving the cost for deploying infrastructure over the cloud or on-premise. But the interesting thing that while we are deploying our web application on using Kubernetes infrastructure, also we have some vulnerabilities. We know those vulnerabilities before in monolith app, and we study the risk and the threat for this vulnerability. But now with the Kubernetes, there is some differences. So we want to discuss those differences. And actually, our base is the OWASP attacks vector, and how we can compare these attacks from monolith app to Kubernetes clusters. We will talk about some topics related to Kubernetes security, what the main thing we need to pen testing inside Kubernetes clusters, and we will take a demo. So firstly, we want to talk about the methodology for Kubernetes penetration testing, which actually we have many methodology to start pen testing, black box pen testing mainly. So first thing, Kubernetes is, yeah.
Nida, just one question. You would like to share the screen because we don't see the screen yet.
You didn't see the screen?
The screen yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I share it, the screen. Can you see the screen?
Not yet. Did you click share the screen and chose the screen?
Yes. You disabled me from the screening. This is a message that I can read it now. Can you check it from your side? No, because I already shared it.
Let me see if there is anything, but no, Can you try now? Because no, I don't see anything on the screen. Yes, now we are seeing the screen. Great. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So I just talked about this slide. It's a beginning about our goals, what we will talk about decisions, methodology, and comparisons between the risk and the threat of web attacks in the monolith app and Kubernetes, and the main topics in Kubernetes that we should do the pen testing inside it. And lastly, we will have the demo. And I started to talk about the methodology and mainly black box. So Kubernetes actually exposed a lot of services outside the clusters, even with TLS and or by HTTP. But actually, the Kubernetes developer recently used the certificates uh, for all its components or endpoints. But even though we still have something to vulnerable to see inside the Kubernetes. So in methodology one, you see the cluster from outside. You don't expect any, you don't know there is any vulnerability. You didn't catch it, but you're trying to find the vulnerability or to just try to find the exposed sorry I okay, I'm talking actually about methodology 2, not 1. So methodology 2, it's about exposing the Kubernetes component endpoints outside. So you start to just discovering and scanning which those services have a vulnerability, or can you get it compromised. And the tooling here is the normal tools that we use actually with the black box penetration testing. And the steps is the same, from information gathering, reconnaissance, enumeration, and to find the components. And the methodology one, let me back to one. In methodology one, which we will consider it in this talk, that we already catch a vulnerability in one of web application services that running in pod, and we want to exploit this vulnerability, and then we want to take advantage from the pod, which this app actually running inside this pod, and how we can go more deeper inside the cluster through that taking advantage from this pod. And the interesting thing that if we could compromise anything from methodology 1 or methodology 2, that because the same reasons, it was a privilege pod or misconfiguration for the role-based access control, or the structure of network policy or DNS servers, or Kube DNS is not structured in the best practice. So I want to start with methodology 2, just quick words that it's start to discovering the subdomains or enumeration, and which these ports are open for the outside the clusters. And searching for some YAML files in GitHub to find some secrets outside, or some clues about configuration that we could exploit it. And or we can use curl command actually directly to test the component that's inside Kubernetes through APIs or etcd data that which stores the component. It's like a database or hashing, stores knowledge, the information, sorry, about the component inside the Kubernetes, and this component know about each other through etcd. And this is the known port for etcd, same as kubelet, which is responsible for the communication between the worker nodes. And this is actually, we called it like a passive attacks or reconnaissance for this surface, the open port and information, if there is something is exposed to the outsides. Let me back to methodology 1, which in the methodology 1, the story is different. And the hacker already known that catch some vulnerability in websites, and that he will to dig inside the Kubernetes cluster to find more vulnerability, take a privilege, and go next step, for example, from pod to the host, or from pod to the networks, or from pod to the networks, or from pod to clusters API, then to master node. Then it's like a chain or attack chain, depends on how how the attacker could find open ports, or how not open ports mainly, but how the attacker can find vulnerability inside pod, or inside network configuration or inside cluster, and then move to another level and take more privileged, and that they can control all the clusters. Actually, let me back to talk about web vulnerability, risk, and the threat before and after Kubernetes. So in Monolith app, the scenario was that someone come to send request to see the sites or the websites or the browser for get or post request, and actually the infrastructure itself is contained from host or two hosts for replica or for high availability, availability, or and connected with one database or two database mirroring database also for high availability. And if if the attacker find any type of web vulnerability, the threat here that to take some data or create some backdoor inside host and compromise the host. But what the difference is here between the infrastructure for the Monolith app and the Kubernetes? For sure, there is a huge differences because the size here of the infrastructure is very big, because in Kubernetes we not only deploy one server or two server for one website, but we use the cluster to deploy thousands of application microservices, and those services actually talking with each other with APIs, many bots, or maybe that will be 1,000 nodes if we have a clients, or maybe all the clients using many clusters with one provider. And if the cluster is good compromised, the attack chain in Kubernetes that can jump from cluster to cluster, which make the threat is catastrophic inside Kubernetes clusters. This is one of the differences. The second one, the network itself, because here the network, it's not only depend on secure shell connection. We have APIs from pod to pod, and maybe from pod to pod in another node, or on the whole node of the system. So the network itself is complicated, and the thread here that we could not find a clue about the attacker, and especially if there is a communication between container to container, and there is financial transaction, financial process that maybe could compromise without any clues. This is one of the most problem, that it's more complicated, more complex systems inside the Kubernetes, with the risk of to have a web vulnerability inside the Kubernetes much bigger than to have vulnerability in Monolith app. And actually in master node here, if you can see, there is a lot of component in Kubernetes API, and if the attacker could not only attacks the worker node through kubelate or through some component, if we could utilize API server or the master node, so it's really here that he could manipulate with all component inside Kubernetes cluster. And if it's federated clusters with more than cloud vendor, it will be also much more disaster threats inside Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is mercy, yes, for a lot, and we have a lot of advantages to use Kubernetes, from cost saving, automation, scaling horizontally scaling, and making the microservices, and actually don't use the whole resources for just one website. That all of that, it's benefit from a Kubernetes, but at the same time we have a lot of blind points inside the Kubernetes. From security side, we need to digging and investigate about how much it will be vulnerable for the outside, especially that there is a lot of component inside the Kubernetes talking with each other through APIs. And inside the Kubernetes clusters, sorry, there is HTTP request, or they don't use certificate, or at least not all the APIs inside the node are using using certificates. Then we here in OWASP, they have some recommendation if we want to deploy a Kubernetes clusters, starting from deployed architecture and component with best practice security model, and to have more thread models inside Kubernetes cluster. And actually this topic is very new and need more volunteers or more people in security, cyber security to study the thread modeling for the clusters in Kubernetes. The thing which make Kubernetes also more risky, that it's also depend on other component like a container. The container coming from Docker, and inside container also maybe some vulnerabilities, not directly related to Kubernetes as it's a separated app, but maybe affect Kubernetes if the container has a privilege inside Kubernetes. So here we will talk about Kubernetes security. We have to have the also the best practice to when we build the Docker image or to when we deploy the container. Same for assessments, general assessment, or for auditing. Before I skip this slide, the main thing also, if we also find the whole vulnerability inside the Kubernetes clusters, that we still need to study more about vulnerability management and vulnerability assessments for each vulnerability, and how much the vulnerability management system will help us to avoid some attacks or some weaknesses inside the clusters. If we want to go back to ASB, we have a top 10 vulnerability in 2020, and all this vulnerability is actually in the monolith app affect databases for injection, or web app itself, or host itself. For network, if it compromise, we talk about IP tables or firewall inside the node. And for sorry, there is misconfiguration with my slides. So, but in Kubernetes, actually, for sensitive data, here we more concerned with sensitive data in Kubernetes, in secrets, in config map, in services. And if this attacks want to take advantage, it will be take advantage from bot capability or role-based access control. Same with broken access control. For the one host or two or three hosts inside inside the network which contain web application. Here the control, the access control broken if it's really a role-based access control broken. Misconfiguration for network, here as I said, we concern with IP table, firewall, and here we have network policy, which we use many tools to manage the network inside Kubernetes controls. Kubernetes, sorry, Kubernetes networks. Let me jump more to the third party or the more component that coming from library or third library, or maybe will coming from Docker, or maybe coming from component itself or monitoring itself, like vulnerable in kubelet or vulnerable in vulnerability in API itself, or vulnerability from Grafana or Prometheus or dashboard, which we use inside with the Kubernetes. Mainly, we have three main topics in security. Kubernetes, we have to care about it and to build it in the most secure setup. The first thing, bot security. So we have to follow the best practice to deploy the bot or the bot security policy to avoid the non-useful or non-useful capability, because the bot itself is actually a process inside the node, and if this process have more capability, it will be more vulnerable to inside the node. The network itself, network policy, and RBAC, role-based access control. This is the main three topics we should take care about it related to Kubernetes security. CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Kubernetes actually achieve this concept in the security through the access control, as I said, using role-based access, or through isolation, integrity through they're using a lot of APIs, they're communicating with each other by automation without personal auditing. Availability, it's this is the main target of using Kubernetes clusters to achieve the availability through high available or through scalability or auto scaling. This is the concept of isolation. So for attack vectors in Kubernetes, this is actually also attack chain or some privileged from initial access to take control, to execute, to maintain access, and to defend, to clear some data. And it's if you just read about those attack vectors, you can just remember the ethical hackers step, starting from information gathering, getting access, execution, and inject the attack or the backdoor, getting access, privilege the access, and hide yourself. And then take the controls or the credential that you got it from secrets to discovery more and more, and to make more impact with attacks. Back to the pod. Why pod is very important? Because pod actually, as I said firstly, it's a process inside host. And so it's related with the host or with the kernel with ID. It's pod with ID, process with ID. And if the pod running as a root or has a privileged, so it's like if you run, it's like has a control inside a host. So if it's compromised, so you can let this pod running some malicious process to take over control over the node or the host. This is the relation between pod and node. And the relation between the pod and the Kubernetes, it's coming with role-based access control, because the pod use service account while it's talking with the Kubernetes API. And this service account considered as a subject, and it has some permission inside the C cluster through the role-based access control. And pod also has a relationship with the networks inside the Kubernetes. And so pod has a relationship with a lot of components inside Kubernetes. That's why we always need to take care about what is running inside the pod and how we configure the pod. And before that, how the application inside pod was built through Docker images. This is actually Kubernetes, and if we want to deploy any app, so we need to go through the pod and container inside pod, and then maybe we have a sidecar container if there is a communication between containers and containers within the pod. And those nodes communicate with each other with the kubelet. Kubernetes API considered as a kernel for the whole cluster. This is the kernel which communicate with all those components, all those nodes, I mean. And the way how those nodes are controlled is to deploy the application using a scheduler. There is some admission controller to control the component itself or the operator. Volume and secrets. Secrets actually something using decoding and encoding. And I want to say something about the secrets, which sometimes we used decoding when we deploy some apps in the pod, and we consider that we are secure, but that's not, because it depends about the algorithm actually we used when we deploy when we do the hashing or decoding or itself. So this is the summary. Kubernetes namespace. Actually, namespace it's not give a security. It's isolation, but it's like logical isolation. I mean, like to create two folders with beside each other, and this is the node, and each node actually take more advantage if it has more APIs communicate with the Kubernetes API. So let me go to Okno Cloud Company. I mean, we have a case study here. So let me go to. This is a company called Okno Cloud, and this company actually deployed some services inside it, or have a client that takes some services from cloud, and it's considered that there is nothing vulnerable at the first look, but actually some security engineers that discover that this website has a vulnerability with as XXE vulnerability, and you can upload malicious images, and if you inject code inside this image, so you can open shell and then execute some command. So let me upload, for example, malicious image from here. So for example, this one. And so it's make some defacement and some malicious code execute here like ls command. So I can see there is it's like a container contain Docker file and running inside. This is website actually running inside the pod. And to make sure, so maybe we can go to host name to check. Yes, it's Kubernetes stateful type. And okay, so now we want to make more compromised, or to take more control, to see what is the service account token. I got here the token, but let me go to say what is happened inside this this cluster. So I want just to talk more about what is token. So I want to jump to, yes. Actually, I want to just describe what is the role-based access control inside the Kubernetes before I complete the scenario and the demo, because we need to understand what is the token mean. And in Linux, actually everything is file, but in Kubernetes, everything is a resource, and that's why we have some verbs, let me say, read, write, execute, with some subjects. They have the permission to execute, and the owner, we have the owner, and he has a right to running the app. So the verbs is read, write, execute, and there is owners for these files. And in Kubernetes, file meets resource, but we don't have owner in Kubernetes. We have we don't have something called permission. We don't have something called owners. That's why the app itself running through the bot. And the verbs here is meet, get, list, watch, create, delete. This is the verbs which is in Kubernetes. So for example, we have a role here, and role, it means that when I assign the verbs to the resource. So in this role, I create map the verb to the bot, list, get, create, bot, and here I create a role. And here we come to talk about role binding. And when I create the role, I need to assign this role with service account. And this service account exists in the pod. This is inside the cluster. So all the pods inside Kubernetes are using service account. And each service account has a role, connected with a role through role binding. So we have user and groups. This is something we go to define it inside Kubernetes. It's not coming default, But service account, this is the default thing inside Kubernetes clusters, and every pod and running inside the Kubernetes using this this account. It's and this account has a token that we have here, a token, and because this website is directly communicated with a pod, I could execute code and take this token. Okay, what else? So if I can use this token, so maybe I can trying to to execute another code, like to get the endpoints. If I can see some endpoints, yes, that I can see the endpoints inside these clusters, inside the pod itself, this pod itself. But let me back to the token. And if I want to take this token, and there is a website here, token that inject this token here, that can expose the namespace ecosystem that which this pod related to, and the name of the secret, and as well as service account name and ID. This name is a default related to ecosystem and from type service account. And actually this one is a subject, but now I don't know what is the main capability of this subject. Let me back here and to take this token to the attacker machine here. Sorry. So here is my local host. I just want to define this token inside the attacker as a local host, or the black. I'm still in the black box or outside the box from penetration testing. I'm not inside the cluster itself, but I want to export this token. Then we want to go to check the certificate, if I can get the certificate from this website. So certificates, yes, let me try to get certificate. Yes, I got it. I can now take the certificate from. Also, I want to save the certificate with file. Oh, sorry. I can't save inside this one. So I have the certificate now and inside the file and also the token. So what I can do, so I want to try to list some bots. If I could try to if this token actually has the permission or the capability to list bot or list endpoint, but as we see that I could list endpoint in the before example, so it has a capability to list point. So let me try if I could list a bot from attacker machine. Sorry. Yes, I listed the pod and actually the exposed pod, the exposed IP of this pod where it's running, the name of its app, and much information about the image from which it's coming, container ID, and more than that is about mount path for the secrets. This is the type of pod security policy is privileged in this pod, and what means is this is a privileged pod, that it means that this pod has capability inside the node, the worker node. So this app actually running inside pod, and as we say that as we saw that this pod has a privileged capability. So if I want to go to run more malicious process to take control for the node, I can do it because the bot itself has a privileged. But the scenario for the attacks is it's not to go with the relation between the bot with worker. The scenario is to go more with compromise the Kubernetes. So I will walk through um, role binding ability for this bot. So let me go to slides. So as we saw this service account, the verbs that he has until now, we see that he has list verbs with pod and endpoints. So actually, maybe we can list more than endpoints here. If we want to go to execute this one through image, we can get it because we now have the certificate and the token, and you can extra and through this actually through these codes or these scripts. So you could expose the IP addresses for the master node and the worker node. Actually, the application like here is exposed through a proxy or kube proxy. So you can't take or you can't know what is the master IP. But if you do previous steps to use Nmap or network tool or scanning, or if you could read the endpoints, so you can actually catch the IP addresses for the node, and then if through some scanning to see which the services are exposed through this IP, you can distinguish which the master and which the worker. It's actually depend on the knowledge. The most important thing here for Kubernetes to know about the knowledge. If you understand how the Kubernetes is working, which services are components running inside the master node, and which one running in the worker node, so you can easily go with more destructive more destructive scenarios to get the cluster compromised. All that about the knowledge, and this is actually the disadvantage for Kubernetes security. Not disadvantage, but I mean there is some disadvantage in security side for Kubernetes, that we have a lot of expert security, but not expert in Kubernetes, and the vice versa. So now if I have the token, I want to go to my terminal actually and make a remote kubectl to make it inside Okno Cloud Kubernetes, but I will not be admin using a kubectl. I just will use the token, which I get it. So I don't know how much privilege this one, but let me go here and run this script. And he asked me again about the token. So I need to grab the token again. And he asked me about the Kubernetes API host. Actually, I got it from the endpoints. And I save it here. So now let me try and get pod. And if you remember, sorry, that from gwt.io, we grabbed the namespace. And actually here I want to see if I have a capability or a role to get pods. Yes, I get it. Let me try if I can get a secret. Oh, okay. So I can't get the secret. I don't have a permission to get secret, but actually I have permission to get the pod, and let me try. Let me see what capability that actually I have with this token kubectl of. Can I create pod? Yes. Okay, nice. Can create binding. Can I create a role binding? Yes. Okay. Can I create secret? secret. No. So this is actually the capability which I have. But if I have the capability to create a bot, and I can create a bot here with and assign the service account or a new and create the binding. Sorry, if I have a permission to create a binding, so I can create malicious binding. I mean, I can give the whole resources, the all verbs to the all resources and assign it to service account, and then use the service account inside bod, which because I have a capability to create a role or role binding, and then I have a capability to create a bod. So it's opportunity actually to create a malicious pod and backend pod and maintain access inside these clusters. And then more advanced compromise the cluster and the node clusters, and maybe in the cloud, the more advanced steps. Let me go back to here, and now maybe someone from security department got a note that it's compromised, and this support going to Kubernetes developer to tell him that we have a compromised or we have a vulnerability. So what the Kubernetes developer can do with this kind of vulnerability or this kind of misconfigured, actually, let me go back here, but this time in the developer machine. So I'm inside the cluster now. So kubectl here, it's for developer. So so we have admin capability here. So the first thing I want to get pod and service account. So this is the bot actually, and this is the name of the service account. Okay, this is the subject now, but I want to check the capability of this service account, what can do. So I want to find the role binding, which connect with the default service account in Okno system namespace. I need to find the role binding, and then from role binding, I need to find the role, and then to maybe I can manipulate with or update or edit the role to make it more secure. So let me back to the developer machine. So I find it. So I will use this code or this script to find the role binding. Okay, so we have two role binding with default. Yeah, this is a default subject connecting with Okno binding. So this is the cluster role binding. Okay, that's nice. I need to go to the cluster role itself. I need to go inside role binding. Inside role binding, this you can see that we have a cluster role called Okno role connected with the subject, which is called default. So actually the subject default is not connected with the role, it's connected with the cluster role. And the difference between role and the cluster role, that the role is contain one namespace. This is so all the capability apply for one namespace, but for cluster role is applied for the all namespaces inside Kubernetes. So it's connected with the cluster role, which is called Okno role. Okay, so I want to go to describe this one. kubectl describe cluster role Okno role. Okay, yes. So for the default service account, which I use it in the attacker machine, the capability is to do create, update, get list for the binding and endpoints, namespaces, pod services. Let me do something here. Let me edit this cluster role. I want to edit it to prevent at least.
Nida,
Yeah.
your screen is stopped.
Really? Sorry. So you still can't see my screen? Danielle, are you still cannot see my you still can't see my screen?
No, we cannot see your screen, Nida. You can hear me, Nida?
Yes, I can hear you, but I'm trying to figure out what.
Yeah, the screen stopped like a couple minutes back, and there are two questions actually in the meantime. One is if you will share the presentation after the meetup, and second, if you can show the code, the payload in the pictures from how to get the
Yes.
token and how to get all of them. Okay, but we still cannot
Yes.
see the screen.
Okay, yes, I can. I will share the talk and I will show you the scripts which is injected inside the images. But let me try to solve the screen problem firstly.
Now we cannot see your camera and we cannot see your screen also. Nida, you can hear me? Nida, any chance you can hear me? You are on mute. Okay, guys, I think there are some problems, technical problems. Nida is still with us, but she's not hearing me and cannot share the screen. Let's see what we can do about it. Nida, test, you can hear me? Oh, I think she's trying to reconnect. So let's give her another 2 minutes. And in the meantime, if you have any questions to what she's presenting on what you want to see more, I think she has another like couple minutes of presentation. So if any questions, let me know. I will ask before she starts again. Yeah, I see she's joining. Yep, Nida, I see you on call. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can. Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't know what happened, but maybe I just recovered the screen and restarted the computer.
Okay. I can hear you. I cannot see you. You are not on camera, and we cannot see your screen. So if you can share your screen and go ahead. I think you still have like another 10 minutes. So we don't have more questions, apparently. I asked if there are any questions to you, but I don't see any coming. So I think we are all good. Just go ahead and we are very curious how you finish the presentation.
Okay, so I'm trying to share my screen. So I hope that you can see my screen.
Yes, now we can see your screen, and I need to go. I need to go without video, so everyone will see only your screen. And go ahead.
Okay, I need to come back here. So
So there is one question, Nida, where you are doing
yes.
that. The question is, if my container is in the root mode and not in the pod, can this compromise the cluster or not?
He mean the container running as a Docker,
Yeah,
and he can.
Docker,
Yeah,
the Docker container is in root mode, not in the pod.
yeah. He means he's not does not work the container inside the cluster, but this container is still privileged, and he has privilege to control the host itself, but not the cluster. But if he could execute some command inside the host, so for example, because kubectl or the API also running from the host, so it depends how much he could run the process to inject himself inside the cluster from that node. I mean, I assume that his container running in node that contain a Kubernetes cluster, but he run as a container, not as a cluster. So he has a privilege with the host itself. with the kernel. So and then he can run some processes to communicate with another processes inside the cluster. But if he means that he's only run inside node without clustering, so I think he need to take a service token or to get someone to in order to um, to be able to inject itself inside the cluster. So without the service token, he can't, because kubectl is an admin service token, admin service account. But in the bot, they have also a service account. As a container, they don't have. So he has to manipulate with the host capability inside the cluster. How the host has a capability inside the cluster. So this is the only, let me see, this is the scenario which will he can manipulate with. So let us back to the to our cluster role here. So finally we here, I think. So we need to edit. I just want to go and delete the list verb. And save it. I think I edited it. So let me go back to the website. Again, and I will try now to list the endpoint again, but I can't because I removed the list capability, so I can't list the endpoint here. And if I want to go to the attacker machine as well, so I missed the capability to list. So if I want to check it, if I can list, can I? No, I can't, because the security analyst come here, and then he remove the list from the remove the list verbs from the capability to these resources. But actually, I still can create a malicious bot, so it's not so secure. So here, it's just example how we could manipulate with a cluster role or with role binding systems and make it more secure with our bot to prevent the attacker from create a bot, or at least list the data itself and take more advantage and information from the bot. And if you note that this vulnerability not related to Kubernetes, the first vulnerability is not related to Kubernetes itself. It's like uploading image or uploading malicious image. But the next step, that because Kubernetes already have some configured that make it more easier for the attacker to jump from the code vulnerability to then to go to the Kubernetes vulnerability. And now I think I have problem with the power. So let me now. I just want to talk about this tool. So for example, as I am in a gray box now. So if I want, for example, to use some tool to detect if I have a vulnerability in our clusters as a gray box, there is some good tools to use it. For example, Kube Hunter is discover the vulnerability inside the whole Kubernetes component, which component is exposed and which component has a vulnerability setting. So I already installed it. So let me, oh, sorry. And I want to go to option 2 because option 2 will go through all the nodes and they start to discover where is the vulnerability exposed inside the cluster in etcd or kubelet. And actually, Kube Hunter is an open source tool, so it's very good tool to give you a highlight about which vulnerable component do you have. For example, in Matrix, Kubelet, or in authentication, and in which exactly endpoint that you have this vulnerability. And there is another tool actually which make auditing for role binding. It's called QB scan.
We lost you, Nida. Yeah. So I think it's another obstacle, the power of the laptop or something. Nida, you there? You are on mute. Yeah. If I knew, I could probably prepare some good jokes, like 3 or 5. But let me see if Nida will join again. She said she has a problem with power, but I don't think she solved this problem. Seeing the situation right now. So let me know, how do you like the topic so far? Like how many of you are DevSecOps or working with Kubernetes every day and securing Dockers or Kubernetes? Is there anyone there working on it? No, no one. Still have some people watching, which is great. And I see Nida has joined again. So Nida, you probably had a problem with power, correct? You are not on audio. Audio is not there. I cannot hear you, and I cannot see you have the audio connected to your. I think you need to click join audio in Zoom. Oh, great, Mary. It looks like it was useful for you. And actually, I would like to see more tools that Nida wanted to present, because the presentation was pretty good. All the information about the technicalities of Docker of Kubernetes was great, but the tool set that she's using is also interesting. Yeah, Nida, now you are connected to audio. Yeah, now we can hear you.
Hello. So
Yes, now we can hear you. Great.
okay. So
Okay, so Nida, we don't want, I think, to take much more than like 10 minutes, but we really would like to see your tool set. So go ahead, share the screen, share the tool set, and I'm quiet now.
okay. So for the tools, so maybe there is some tools.
We cannot see your screen yet.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see both of your screens.
Okay, cool. So we were talking about Kubiscan. So for example, this is one of the open source tools, Kube Hunter or rule binding auditing or Kubiscan. This is three tools. You can use it as a gray testing, gray black box testing, sorry, gray box testing, to just check if you have a vulnerability clusters. So for example, this command is used to check about the risky cluster binding. And there is actually, you can check that there is Okno binding, and yes, there is a high priority or a high level of risks. And actually, I want to say note that in attacker, even if the attacker, even if we remove the permission from the attackers, from creating a pod or whatever. So there is an interesting point that because, as I said, attacker or pentester has to have the knowledge, so he can use one of the existing rule binding that we are already using with monitoring or with some replication or with some Kubernetes controller. He can use the role binding itself and add the service account with this role binding without any problem. So he does not need actually to create a new role binding. He can inject a new subject with existing role binding, that which make the more catastrophic effects if we could steal some service account with a privilege and to go inside this this cluster. Actually, there is this is a tool, so we can try it. So this tool, let me try to check the role. And actually they can describe why, for example, the cluster role or role has a risky or they distinguish it as a risky role binding or role. And then if we want to use QB-scan, you can not only role or cluster role, you can use to see the risky pod container as well. So this is mainly for Kubernetes. So let me back to slides to finalize then the final notes. Actually, this is the final slide. I want to talk about it. There is a concept called 4Cs, and this concept means that you need to be secure in 4Cs in code. And in code, as we build the code always using purpose suite or the proxy or dynamic analysis or building the thread model, even if you want to deploy this code inside the Kubernetes clusters or with Docker or with on-prem machines without clustering, you need always to make sure that the code itself is secure from front end or back end or from all the vulnerability. So Okno Cloud now will report it for the development team, yes, but it will need more time under the development, solve this vulnerability, and then deploy it with the container, and then let the Kubernetes YAML files repull it, and then rerun it inside the cluster. And they need maintenance window, which make the process it's take more time. But there is a solution that to use automation tool or Jenkins that to repair the code directly and then deploy it with a cluster directly to solve this problem. And this is another concept of the DevSecOps or the security, which we called it automation or SOR, or how we to find the vulnerability by automation tool and repair it and then deploy it. So the second thing is the container code, then the container. And in the container, actually, there is an open source tool that we can use it to make the image itself the image itself has to be verified and signed. And we can use open source tool to verify and sign these images and build it in best practice and test the container itself inside Docker before deploy it in Kubernetes. In Kubernetes, we already mentioned 3 tools if open source. Also, there is a money commercial tool and code tool. I already try it, like Twastlack. We used to discover the vulnerability in networks or in many others component. And the fourth C is a cloud. So all these chain are communicate with each other and they affect each other. So I think this is a final slide. I want to finalize it. So maybe there is some another knowledge inside within previous slides. Maybe I will leave it for the audience. They can read it, and I'm open for a question if you have another questions.
So I see one question coming from the people. This is if you know any tool that does both dust and cluster assessment. So probably if there is any addition to Zap or Burp Suite or any other tool that you know that can do cluster assessment.
Actually, Zap it's connected with some automated tool because there is a different main purposes here. Zap proxy or Zap or this tool is with the code itself, with the development team, and the cluster itself it's for infrastructure. So to find one tool that tests the security with the code as a dynamic tools and with the cluster, it's two different paths. So, but I'm sure that we can find tool campaign between those two tools. I mean, we can deploy automated tool that can run the Zap as a job and run another tool to test the clusters. So you can monitoring the two processes for that. This is the answer, but at least until now we don't have such like tool do dynamic analysis for the code and then test the cluster because it's two different things, two different system coding and infrastructure.
Okay, thanks for that. So I don't see any more questions. I would really like to thank you, Nida, for the availability and for
Thank you.
being with us. That was really good presentation. If you can send me the slides, I will provide them until the under the video, and I will also share on the Meetup page. And
Yes, sure.
everyone, thank you for joining. I really appreciate if you can fill up the survey that is in the description, and I really encourage you to connect with Nida and ask questions offline, or just connect on LinkedIn and be a friend. Thank you very much, and Nida, have a
Thank
very
you.
good day. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.